Imagine walking through Sector Null. It's a city that's been rebuilt so many times it completely defies logic. And right there, at the intersection of Meridian and Null 7, you look up, and the rain doesn't fall. It literally spirals, just spirals in midair. It's this absolutely impossible anomaly, and it's the perfect hook to kick off this explainer. Because today, we're diving into the Eigenfrequency of the Void, unraveling a mystery that starts with bizarre weather and somehow ends up questioning the very nature of human existence. Let's get right into it. So, to really wrap our heads around what's happening in Sector Null, we have to start by asking one massive, mind-bending question. What if a building could actually record the frequency of human lives? Just think about that for a second. It shifts our entire perspective from trying to solve a simple mystery to finding actual meaning. We aren't just looking at weird urban planning or freak weather anymore. We're looking at the very real possibility that this spiral rain is tied to a massive, hidden architecture, a structure that isn't just standing there holding people, but is actively, relentlessly listening to them. And the whole thing hinges on one highly specific number, 43.7. Now, this isn't just some random static. Enter Priya. She's a signal archaeologist, which, by the way, means she basically listens to the old ghost frequencies of forgotten city networks. And Priya discovers this exact 43.7 megahertz frequency pulsing right behind that spiral rain. It's an unlicensed, incredibly steady signal that's been echoing through the city for over 14 years. It's patient, it's continuous, and it is completely unexplained by any official city infrastructure. There's no record of it anywhere. So Priya does what any good signal archaeologist would do. She traces this 43.7 megahertz breadcrumb trail right back to its source. And it leads to a place called the Hive. Now, if you look at official city documents, they coldly refer to this place as a transitional habitation node. But in reality, it's just this old, heavily retrofitted building with 42 occupied units. The people living inside are just strangers. They're neighbors who pass each other in the dim hallways with polite little nods, completely and utterly unaware that they are living inside the exact origin point of this massive invisible network. Inside this place, we've got four really distinct, well, let's call them nodes. First up is Kael, the walker. He navigates the city purely by instinct and spends most of his nights up late pondering these really deep philosophical questions. Then there's Priya, the listener, our signal archaeologist who's actively decoding the city's invisible pulse. We've also got Morel, the observer. He's an older guy meticulously tracking the evolution of human consciousness on a literal timeline in his room. And finally, Fen, the courier, who spends his days physically moving these highly sensitive configurations of information across the city. They all have their own unique relationship with Sector Null, but they are totally clueless about how deeply tied together they actually are. Take Kael, for instance. The guy carries around this small leather notebook. It's almost entirely empty except for one phrase, embossed heavily right on the first page, "What belongs to you?" And he uses this one phrase to fuel a constant, running philosophical argument in his head about property. He wonders, is the ego really just a mental filing system to keep track of what we own? Is the self actually just a tuned frequency we happen to be receiving? But here's the wild part. What Kael doesn't know yet is that he didn't even write that phrase. It was left for him 3 whole years ago, basically as a test. Now, the building itself, it isn't just passive brick and mortar. Enter Vestibule 9, or just VEST for short. VEST was built from this old emergency announcement software, but somehow over the years, it's developed genuine anxiety and concern for the residents. It's kind of like an overbearing digital parent. And VEST is the one who drops an absolute bombshell. The Hive isn't just a container for these people. It is an active antenna and a massive transmitter. The very physical structure of the building, down to the pipes and the concrete, has literally been shaped by that continuous 43.7 megahertz signal. And when Priya finally figures out how to map that signal visually, the result is absolutely staggering. It doesn't just show up as some boring sine wave. No, it renders as 42 distinct nodes arranged in a nested spiral. Does that sound familiar? It's the exact same spiral as the rain outside. The building is actively mapping the relational topology of its 42 residents in real time. The lines between the nodes actually thicken and brighten based on the intensity of their genuine, life-altering encounters with one another. The building is literally keeping score. To make sense of all this, Priya comes up with a breakthrough theory she calls accretion. Basically, the idea is that when a legacy network, or really any physical system, runs for an incredibly long time, way past its original design, It doesn't just store data anymore. Its accumulated experience fundamentally becomes its physical structure. The system essentially learns to dream. It reaches a tipping point where the distinction between what the building actually is and what the building has experienced completely collapses. Let's break that down, because it's a real game changer for how we understand memory. Traditional memory is a lot like a computer hard drive, right? You have a separate, designated storage space where you save and retrieve records of things that already happened. But accretion is an entirely different beast. Think of it more like geology. A river cutting through a canyon doesn't intend to make a canyon, and the canyon doesn't remember the river. The canyon literally is the record of the river. In the same way, the building passively accretes the lives, the emotions, and the interactions of its residents straight into its walls. The structure itself is the archive. Okay, so this brings us to a massive twist. Fen, our courier, gets sent on a delivery out to the Paleolith district. It's this ancient, completely unrenovated part of the city that constantly smells like old ink. And there, Fen meets a woman who reveals something unbelievable. She has been secretly guarding an external physical archive of all the Hive's residents. And she's been doing it quietly, under the radar, for 30 years. Suddenly, the mystery of Fen's delivery makes total sense. This woman explains that Fen is actually the final courier in a massive 19-year sequence. 5 separate couriers were used to deliver 5 separate biometric cases directly to her. None of the couriers knew where the cases came from. But the real shocking twist here? Every single one of those couriers unknowingly lived in the Hive. To finish this incredible puzzle, the couriers literally had to be the cargo. The very act of them moving through the city with the packages was part of the frequency being recorded. It's just brilliant. To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this whole shebang, we gotta look backward at the building's physical evolution. 31 years ago, this structure started out as a water treatment facility. Then, 22 years ago, it got completely gutted and turned into a massive data center. And finally, it became the residential Hive we see today. But here is the kicker. Through every single one of those massive physical renovations, that 43.7 megahertz resonance was perfectly, deliberately preserved. Someone out there made absolutely sure that no matter what the building was being used for, it never stopped listening. So when our 4 residents finally pop these biometric cases open, they find an incredibly detailed breakdown of their own lives spanning almost 2 decades. The earliest case, dropped off 19 years ago, is full of hand-drawn maps and frequency notations. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. This external record actually predates the residents even moving into the building. The archive literally knew they were coming. It tracked the building's frequency as it slowly prepared itself for their arrival. So who actually orchestrated this? Who pulled this off? Enter Elara Voss, known in the old records simply as E. She was the original engineer who built that water treatment facility 31 years ago. While she was calibrating the filtration systems, she discovered something amazing. 43.7 megahertz is exactly what material rightness sounds like when water moves perfectly without any resistance. But instead of just noting it in a maintenance log and moving on like a normal person, she spent the next 3 decades secretly calibrating the building across all its different iterations, tuning it perfectly to record human accretion. Poring over Voss's notes, it hits Kael, Priya, Morel, and Fen like a ton of bricks. The central unit of analysis in this grand 30-year experiment isn't the individual ego. It isn't the physical property we own. It's not even the building itself. The unit of analysis is the relation. They realize they don't own the 43.7 frequency. They are simply conductors. They're just the water moving through the pipes, participating in this massive, beautiful experiment of long-duration observation. And honestly, this entire crazy journey is perfectly summed up by Dar, an anonymous graffiti artist who's actually been arguing with Kael on a city wall for years. She paints this final, inescapable truth. You are the frequency. The frequency is not yours. The frequency is you. You see, you don't own the connections you make. You are composed of them, which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question to chew on long after this explainer wraps up. What kind of frequency is your life accreting into the walls around you right now?